everybody to a interview, our first interview. I'm pretty excited for our first ever guest, Max Hawthorne. If you guys don't know about him, he's done some pretty exciting books. As you can see, I have every single one so far. The other one is ordered on its way. Cannot wait to open it up. But before we get into the books, I want to hand it over to Max and have him introduce himself to all you guys. Max?
Thanks, Keegan. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not really used to talking about myself per se. So what do you want to know?
I know it's the hardest thing. We've been asked to write biographies and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know where I start. Like, I don't keep track of that stuff.
Well, my daughter would frown on me talking about myself all the time. So, I'm probably used to not doing so. I am a novelist by trade. Most people know me for the Cronus Rising series of, I guess you call it dinosaur fiction or paleo fiction, as a lot of people call it. The latest novel, Kronos Rising Kraken Volume 3, was just released this past Saturday for the 4th of July. Very exciting stuff. It's been doing very well. It's hit 3 different Amazon bestseller lists. It's got some great reviews, but most importantly, what I find most rewarding is the feedback that I've seen, like on social media. People are like, the last book kind of left everybody hanging. And I'm not going to do any spoilers, but people at the end of the book were like, no! And stuff like that. Like, what the hell could you do this to me? And so for the last 2 years almost, whatever it's been, I've had like daily emails from people that wanted to know, when the next book was out, what was going to happen, all this other stuff. Like I said, we're not trying to do spoilers, but I've seen people talking on Facebook and stuff, in groups and things like that, and they're counting down the days of when the book's getting there. They're tracking it with the, through Amazon, USPS, for the day it's getting there. People talked about how one guy, like he skipped the fireworks because he got his book at 4 p.m. and he just kept reading and reading, and everybody's like, no spoilers, anybody, for people who haven't read it yet, please don't ruin it for other people and stuff. And it's really flattering when you see that type of fan response. It's like Game of Thrones type stuff. Before the last season.
Yeah, before. Yes.
Yeah. But where everybody was so hyped up and everything, you just didn't want anybody to ruin it for you. You never know what's going to happen, and I'm ecstatic that people are that enthusiastic about the novel. So, thank you.
And I've read some of the reviews, and a lot of people are saying it's your best one yet. So I'm definitely really excited to pick it up. And
well, I discovered a secret to better writing.
Okay.
It's called sleep.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, if you get some sleep, your brain recharges, your imagination expands, and things like that. When I wrote Kraken 1 in particular, I was badly hurt. I had some home improvement store whose name will not be mentioned. Okay. I sent a delivery guy to my house, old house, with this big sliding glass door to replace the one on the deck into the kitchen. And it was one of those double pane ones with the mini blinds in between, real fancy. We were getting ready to sell the house. We wanted to look great and all that. It also weighed 500 pounds. So in the store, when you see it on this, hinge there, you can move with 2 fingers. Feels very light. But when a single delivery guy shows up and says, "Hey man, by myself, this thing's really heavy. You got to come out and get in the truck and help me." And you're like, "What?" And then you and you got this thing, and it's so heavy. And the only handle was like this little plastic handle, a foot off the ground. So you got to do like a deep sigh. Anyway, long story short is I suffered a horrific back injury. I had to have spinal injections, all this stuff. I was in horrible pain and taking painkillers like they were going out of style. And that affects your writing. The book was well received and everybody loved it, but you can't be at your absolute best if you're kind of in a haze, until everything else like that, and so that a lot of that I was past that when I wrote Kraken 2, which I felt was a better book in terms of like the pacing and the action and stuff like that. And this one, if people think it's the best one, I'm happy to agree with them. I really expanded my vocabulary and my visuals, and I was able to put myself more into the characters.
Okay.
I think that's the secret to success, whether you're writing a POV, a point of view from a protagonist, an antagonist, a man, a woman, you know, or a monster.
Yeah, or a well.
Yeah, you've read my books, and I do points of views from pliosaurs to octopuses to
Sperm whales and
orcas. I mean, anything.
yeah.
And the trick is to, you know, you got to put yourself in there. You got to become the thing, the creature, and they can't all be the same. You know, a whale's not going to think like an octopus, and vice versa. So, you know, I think there's a little bit of an art form to trying to create that sort of aura that comes with being that particular thing. And when you have a clear head and you get a little bit of sleep, it's easier to do that. So I'm making a point now to try and sleep more and more, much to my wife's chagrin when there's tours to be done, you know. What? But I've got, you can't see it in here, but in my office to my right, there's a beautiful lazy boy, you know, leather recliner and all that. Yeah. And that's for, like, you know, how can I, you know, it's for work, you know?
Yeah.
You gotta recharge the batteries. So
Yeah. I mean, as someone that has to create videos all the time, I know when I'm trying to write scripts down, I'm like, if I'm not 100%, it drags or it's missing something, or, you know, so I definitely understand sleep does make a huge difference.
yeah, stuff slips past you when you're tired.
Yeah,
You know, including typos.
You know, if I work too late, lately I've gotten better about it. I'm like, all right, I'm not done. I'll just stop it here, edit the next day. It used to be where I would be like, I'm not done. I got to get this done, and then I would just force it to be done instead of, you know.
Yeah, that's
not good.
That's bad, and it suffers. You know, I saw at one point somebody was like, "Oh, the book looks like and this was like some troll leaving a backstabbing review, but like it looks like halfway through or the last quarter, like somebody else took over the writing, like his brother did it or something." You know, I'm like, which one? The lawyer, the doctor? Maybe it's the one that the mechanical engineer that writes manuals about refrigerants. Yeah, that would be good. You know, that would be a difference in writing style. But, you know, rest is important, and, you know, but imagination is everything. So if everybody thinks this is the best book, that's great, because I'm only going to get better. And I say that with all humility.
No, and so, because I've now read all of them, including Memoirs of a Gym Rat, up until this one.
Memoirs of a Gym Rat.
Yeah. How hard was that for you to write? Or was that?
How hard was it to write?
Yeah. Was that?
Well, you see that I want to find a way to give Memoirs of a Gym Rat on Amazon away for free for people, like ongoing. You know, like it's not about money. You know, the Gym Rat book wasn't about, you know, when I was working in the fitness industry, it was before I started that, before I wanted to become a writer. And you know, I was a bodybuilder back then. I was young and had given up being a veterinarian, and you know, it was a passion for me, physical fitness, and I wanted to share it with other people. But then I started seeing the horrible side of things, you know, the fitness industry when you work in it, and the people you work with and for, and the corporations. I mean, it's just like awful. And so, like, the only reason I stayed in a long time was I used to have a fitness product that I had designed and patented. I mean, I was on QVC with this product many years ago, 20 years ago. You know, I got to hang out with Corey Everson, who was like Miss Olympia 6 times and stuff. And, you know, it was really cool. But so in the end, though, the last, like, I don't know how many years I was in the industry, though, I was so appalled by stuff that was going on in there that every day when something bad would happen, I would take like a Post-it or a little piece of paper or scrap of paper, and I would write what it was, and I'd put it in my pocket. And every day I would come home with like 2, 3, 5 horrible things, you know, that were just like, oh my God, things I saw people being taken advantage of, ripped off, conned, the people I worked with. I mean, it was just, you know, so when I left there, I had a shoebox full of research to work with, crammed full. I could write a sequel. But the great thing about Memoirs of a Gym Rat, as funny and gross and disgusting as it is, I mean, like, am I allowed to use not expletives? Well, this might be an expletive, but colorful metaphors and stuff like that on here?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, like one day I'm sitting in my office and I'm talking to this young guy that joining the gym and stuff. And this was, I was on the side of my lunch break and stuff. I'd be writing Cronus Rising at work and stuff. But anyway, so all of a sudden this woman bursts into my office and she screams, Max, there is, I could say SHIT on here.
Yeah.
Okay. There is shit all over the ladies' locker room. And I'm like, what? And she goes, shit, human shit. And I'm like, what? Like, this is like Monday, and I have no idea what she's talking about. And she goes, it's on the walls, it's on the shower curtains. And I'm staring at her like this, like, I have no idea what she's talking about. And then she goes, did you work this weekend? I'm like, I don't work weekends. And she goes, oh, well, the sewer pipe exploded in the ladies' locker room and shower area, and it was all over the place, and they never cleaned it up. And there's dry, and now she's foaming at the mouth, dry, all this stuff, and I'm just mortified. And I'm like, I'll let someone know. Like, what do you want me to do? You know? And she goes, and she turns and storms off. And I turn to the guy, and I'm like, I am so sorry. Honestly, this doesn't normally happen. And he goes, oh, it's the ladies' locker, not the men's. I don't care. And I'm like, but every day was an adventure in there. And I wanted people, though, to be aware of what they're getting into, because there's everything. So many people are so two-faced, in there, and it's all about money. It honestly is. So I gave people with that book the ability to defend themselves, where I tell you how these salespeople operate, the managers, what kind of tricks and lines they're going to use on you. I tell you everything, and it's just out there. A lot of people didn't like this book coming out. The powers that be, and who all go to these gyms, in the media stuff, a lot of them came down on it to really try and like stop it from getting out there. They don't like, it's like cockroaches when you shine a light on them, and they run away. They don't like that. Okay, so if I can find a way to give away Memoirs of a Gym for free, I'm going to. And this way, everybody can have it as a free survival guide, not get screwed. Because that's the name of the game.
I'll tell you, I was really enthralled with it. Because I listened to it on Audible. And because I work a day job where I sit there for 8 hours typing, so I'm like, I need something good to listen to. And I could not stop listening to it. And I put it on. Yeah. I put it on my Goodreads that I was listening to it, and a couple of my coworkers came up and were like, "What is that? What are you listening to?" So hopefully, I was able to help spread it, because I thought it was pretty good, actually. I really
I don't remember the narrator's name that they hired, but he was a riot. I mean, he was like a voice comedian, and he was able to do like the inflections and everything. It was like me but worse, and. He really, he did a great job. So good stuff,
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. So you had mentioned earlier you had started writing Kronos Rising at the time you worked at the gym.
Yeah, I started writing the book, gosh, before I got into novels. I used to do like little side pieces for like submissions for like fishing magazines, outdoor stuff, things like that. I'm a passionate angler, and I'm also into conservation. So like one thing I was very proud of was I wrote this piece called It's His Reef, Not Ours. And it was opposing a plan that they had down in Florida where they were going to kill and butcher like 400 adult Goliath grouper for studies. And the study was to see how old the fish were. You're going to kill 400. These fish were endangered. Now they've rebounded. But so their plan was to kill 400 adults, breeding stock, brood stock, and just to find out how old they were. And that was ridiculous because there were non-lethal ways that they could just catch the fish, and hold it in a cradle and take a sample and release the fish. So what was the point, And so I wrote this piece opposing that, and discussing the merits of the fish and how obviously they have a right to be there and so forth. And it helped contribute towards keeping them. Anyway, I ramble.
You're good.
But so I was doing these pieces on the side, while working health club, while doing my fitness product and all this stuff. And I didn't start get into writing novels, I would say, until probably it was got to be around 2000, something like that, you know. And it was around 2003 or 2004 where I first started writing Cronus Rising. And, you know, I used to like work on it at home, and then I would bring like some stuff to work or email myself a file, and I would edit it at work. It is true. And I was still the top sales rep in the district, okay? But I would be like sitting there working, you know, like I have it on the screen, and I could see my boss's office out of the corner of my eye, and then I would see her go to get up, and whether she was leaving her office or not, as soon as she got up, I clicked save, close, and then put some nonsense on there and pretend that I was working, you know? And that was my spiel, okay? That's how, you couldn't write from scratch there. You could only edit, because to write the new stuff, you need to be in the zone. Mm-hmm. You know, me at least. You know, I mean, I have to put myself in the place that I'm writing about. So it's almost like I'm standing there watching and just, you know, telling you what I see. You can't do that at work unless you're completely alone and uninterrupted by anything. So really, you can't. But editing, you can get away with, you know. So yeah, but it took me the book when I first wrote it. It took me a year. And not just because it was a huge book, it was because I wrote for 6 months, and then I had a 3-month like medical thing, I think surgery or something, and then took another 3 months to finish the first draft. But then that draft went through revisions and revisions and revisions, and I thought it was, you know, done. And then I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a screenwriter out of California named Chris Parker. He does a lot of big movies. He did Heaven is for Real. You probably heard of it. Okay, yeah. So great guy. He always, when you talk to him on the phone, he always sounds like he just woke up from a nap. And it's just his personality. He's like, yo, dude, what's going on, man? Like that. And you're like, do you live by the beach? Yeah. You're like, oh. So anyway, so I sent it to him, and he was like, all right, so look, there's some problems. And you're only going to get one read out of me, so let's talk about this. And I'm like, okay. And at the time, you've read the first book, okay? So you remember the Cretaceous flashback scenes, for example? You know, the part where you're the time of the dinosaurs with the meteor and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's been a while, I'm sorry. So that was all one big prologue at the beginning of the book. And I was a newbie, you know, to write novels, even though I educated myself on how to do it, and read all these books on how to write novels and stuff. Some things they don't teach you. So the prologue, he was like, the prologue's got to go. I'm like, what? And he goes, yep. He goes, because you're giving away the whole story right there. You know, you're telling people what this thing is, how big it is, where it lives, how it eats, how it hunts, how it breeds, and also how it survived to the present. It's all there. You ruin the whole story, the suspense, by having that up front. I'm like, oh, he's like, it feels like you're murdering your child and what. So he said that had to cut out. And then we were talking about, you know, like how to start the book and all that. He goes, if I was writing the book, I'd start off with the shark finning ship incident, you know, mysterious, dark, ends in death, you know, like Jurassic Park opens up dark, rain, you know, raptor, ends in death. You want something like that. And of course, that was the next scene once you took the prologue out, so that worked nicely. But, you know, so I learned so much from him, but I did not want to give up the Cretaceous flashback stuff. See, because that's the crux of the story. You know, everybody's has, like, you see all these books and movies and stuff about these giant monsters that have survived from prehistory and they're alive today. Okay. And, you know, everybody wants to come up with something new, but you want to come up with something new or unique if you can, but that's also believable. You know, you don't want, like, oh, it was frozen in an iceberg for 66 million years. Okay. Show me a spot on this planet that's been frozen for 66 million years, first off. Let alone if you're going to survive frozen for 66 million years and then get thawed out and be alive and hungry and pregnant, okay? But, you know, so there's all these different things. And like the Wollemi pines from Australia are a species of tree that's been around since the Jurassic. And they lived in a secluded valley that was shielded from weather extremes. So they've been around since past the Cretaceous, basically. So I was like, well, if that could work, then why not something like this? You know, not like Skull Island and stuff like that, but I needed marine stuff, you know? So that's when I came up with the idea for the caldera, and using the asteroid impact and the tidal waves to swamp the caldera and deposit all these prehistoric creatures in that caldera, like the giant fishbowl, as we call it, okay? You've even got geothermal heatings, like it's your aquarium heater if there's an ice age, you know, so your creatures don't freeze to death. So I wanted that to stay in there. So I, as you probably know from the book, I worked it in where later on, you know, like the principal characters, Jake and Amara, are talking about, you know, well, if this thing's alive, how could they be alive for the present? All this stuff. And she's like, well, I've got a theory on that. And then that opens up to the opening scene from the Cretaceous flashback, is almost as if she was telling this whole big story, and that sweeps us into that. So I was able to break it in bit by bit by bit, but later in the book without actually ruining the story. So it added to it instead of taking away.
I'll tell you, going into book 2 and slowly finding out what happened to the characters from book 1, I was shocked, but I like it. I like how even the characters that might be like bait for the animals and stuff, really well written, so you really don't know who's going to live and die. So you feel the suspense, and that's what I like. I don't like the books where you're like, oh, well, this is definitely the main character, they're going to make it through.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of red shirts. You know? I mean, let's put it this way. There are red shirts, and then there are red shirts, okay? So I think it's important that you do character development. And, you know, like my editor was telling me the other day, you know, he was like, I wish everybody would give, like, descriptions like you do with your characters and stuff. Like, you know, when you describe a character or a scene, I can see it. You know, it's like I'm there, I can see it, I can smell it, I can taste it, whatever. He goes, some of these people, they describe a character, they don't. They just don't. They just say he's 36 years old and has black hair. I'm like, okay. It's like, you know, in order for people to care about a character, which is important to keep them reading, because if you don't give a rat's butt about the person, the character, you're not going to read. You know, you're going to throw the book away. I know, because I've done it. So, you know, even if it's a bad guy, you want to have some sort of positive or negative, how about strong emotions for that person. You know, you may be hoping he's going to get it. Like, oh, I've seen that. They talk about, I hope so-and-so gets it. Grayson better get what's coming to his. You know, Dwyer needs to be hung up by his nether regions and, you know, stuff like that. You know, so if you can instill these emotions in people, you're doing your job. But if you're writing and the characters, if I can't tell who a character is, you know, I don't just need a physical description. I need something that tells me about them, you know. And you don't have to throw it all at people all at once. You know, I try and break it up into little dribs and drabs as part of the story. So it comes along, so you're like, oh, really? Oh, so he did that, you know? Oh, look, he knows martial arts. You know, you don't know that about Jake when you first see him. You don't find out until far, far later when Amara catches him working out on the wooden dummy. You know, that type of stuff. So, you know, your characters mature and you get carried along with them.
Yeah, and you're writing, like you said, I mean, when I was reading it for the first time, the first Cronus, I could definitely picture everything like crystal clear, like a movie. Like a movie was playing. And so I'll tell you, books that I used to enjoy by different authors, I'd go back and read, and I'm like, it just feels not as good quality anymore. So, I mean, that's good for you. Your books are definitely high quality. And that was something that kind of worried me going into it because there was so much praise for your book.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I dug into it, I'm like, oh, no, it deserves all this praise. Like, it blew me away because most of the time you hear all this praise, you go into something, you're like, well, it was okay, but, you know, the hype kind of killed it. The hype didn't kill anything, so.
I'll send you the $20 in the mail.
This is not sponsored. That's just my honest opinion.
You know, just made me think of when it was when the first book was out, and it was somebody, I don't remember who it was, but he was like messaging me, and he goes, you know, I was reading about your characters, and I could really, like, you know, I could really relate and tell who they were and stuff. And then that Amara woman, he goes, oh my God, I could see her in my head, and she was hot like this. And I'm like, dude, take it easy, all right? It's me. All right, just stop breathing heavy on the lens, you know. But anyway, something. You know, it's funny. I was watching Pacific Rim Uprising the other day, and it was so strange. The principal characters' names were Jake and Amara.
Were they really?
Yeah. And I thought, well, that's odd. I wonder where that came from. Must be a coincidence, you know.
Right. Someone must be a fan.
Yeah, or inspiring people on the other side of the world, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Going into Cronus, what made you choose the Kronosaur as your main animal? Considering, like, most of the time, other authors and stuff use a certain animal. We'll get to in a later time. What made you pick the Kronosaur?
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, there's certain creatures that have been done to death, and I'm assuming you're hinting at like giant sharks and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, those, it's not just the fact that there's been so many of them, or even trying to stand out, because I mean, I eventually put a Megalodon in my series.
Mm-hmm.
People wanted it. I mean, sometimes you have to give the people what they want. But I try to make her different than your usual run of the mill while still being fearsome and stuff, and basing it on scientific theories of my own. But the Pliosaur, see, first off, the animal in book one is not a Kronosaurus queenslandicus per se. There's two known species of Kronosaurus, that one and boycensis, which is basically from Colombia. I actually have a Kronosaurus, a little paddle bone in my collection.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I did a piece on it. You want to see it?
Yeah,
yeah. Let me get it. Just take 2 seconds. It's right over here. I always got to make sure I lock that, because the cats, there's something about the smell of a 20,000-year-old mammoth tooth that's worse than catnip. They want in that fossil display case big time. So this, I don't know if you can see this well.
Yeah, I can see.
Is I believe it's a metapodial. But anyway, it is one of the really little tiny bones in the flipper of the animal. So even though this looks small, the Pliosaur that had this was probably, I'd say, fleshed 36 feet long or so. Pushing the size of a bus. And if you could see how shiny that is in there, you see this?
Mm-hmm.
And smooth. Okay, this shows you this is a young animal here. There's no arthritic changes going on in the synovial joint or anything like that. So this bad boy, could have lived longer. Don't know what happened to it. But anyway, the point is, though, this was found, in Staryosko, Belgrade, Russia, which previously Kronosaurus specimens are only known from Australia, I think New Zealand, and the Colombian specimen. So now I did a piece on this, including showing that it's probable that these animals had a much huger range and they ruled the Cretaceous seas, possibly of the whole planet. But anyway, so back to your question. I digress again. And it's just cool, you realize that this thing was like some 15-ton marine reptile, whatever, 90 or 100 million years ago. I forget the date on it and stuff, swimming around, munching on anything it wanted. But for the books, I created my own species for the novels. First off, Pliosaurs were supposed to have gone extinct 90 million years ago. So I took on the aspect of there being an unknown, undiscovered species that made it all the way through to the KT event and was able to survive, etc. All that. And it's kind of based on the monster Aramberry, which is a pretty well-known specimen. It's a big animal. I think that around 45 feet long. But it's also considered to be a juvenile, and it was killed when it was attacked by a larger version, probably of itself. Like if you've ever seen a National Geographic special, Boss Croc, and they have like a 20-foot Nile croc, and then there's a 10-foot one that wants to challenge him, and he grabs it and he literally bites half its face off. Like the crocodile has no upper jaw from here down or something like that, and probably dies, and whatever the case should be. So the monster Aramberry Pliosaur had puncture marks on its skull from being bitten by larger pliosaurs. And one of those tooth marks had tooth crowns over 12 inches long, is what the Eberhard Frey, the paleontologist, estimated. That means an animal that's probably the size of the ones in my book, 75, 80 feet long, something like that. So, but anyway, it's not just the demeanor. I mean, you're talking about a huge, perfectly adapted animal, fast. I mean, much faster than, let's say, if there was a shark that size, infinitely faster, maneuverable, the most powerful jaws on the planet. But it's also personality. It's like a dragon or something like that, Like if you take, like I've always said this, if you look at the eyes of a shark, without the Quint thing, you know. You've been looking at shark's eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes, don't even seem to be living, and all that stuff is great. But they really are just black on a great white shark. There's no emotion. You can't really read anything off of that, you know? And that's scary, but it's different when you stare at, let's say, a crocodile, you know, which are much more intelligent animals. I mean, people have, you know, had them as pets in the wild and, you know, not gotten eaten and stuff. But anyway, so if you look in a crocodile's eyes when staring at you, it's like you're looking at a dragon. You know, you could see its sizing you up. You could see it's thinking, it's contemplating. There's malevolence there. And so that personality also loans itself to a much more terrifying predator than, you know, just a fish or something else like that. So personal preference, I guess.
I think it makes a good monster. And like I mean, I really don't see too many. I do have another Kronosaur book somewhere, but I really don't see like Kronosaurs or Pliosaurs being used that much. Like even like Titanoboa, which just was recently discovered. I've seen like 10 books on it already.
Yeah, it always cracks me up when you see some of these books. I always wonder about the title. It's like, are you trying to feed off of keywords with that? You know, I mean, if you call your book, you know, Titanoboa, okay, so that means everybody looking for Titanoboa is going to find your novel, or Apex Predator. You know, like these are like search engine titles. I mean, come on, guys, write a real book and do a real title. Sorry,
that's too hard for them, though.
I don't know. I don't want to pick on anybody, but still, I mean, I see some of this stuff. You know, when Kraken 1 came out, and I'm going to put this out there, okay? There were at least half a dozen titles, pretty much all by the same publisher, that were feeding off of my book. They all came out either a week or two before and then right after. That's not a coincidence, you know? And I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that. No, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, people, it's not hard to figure out. But that's why, like last summer, I would get these strange people asking me, you know, like about the release date for Kraken 3 and the title. Okay, you know, that also. And these are people that like you've never heard from before in your life. And I know who my passionate readers are. Okay, and these persons send you these huge emails, and they're all kissing up like they worship the ground you walk on. And you're like the greatest author since Michael Crichton and stuff. And I'm like, really? Am I all that? And a bag of chips, as they used to say. But and then they want information. And at one point, I put out a fake cover, you know, for the next book. Everybody, I mean, people were all thinking there was going to be this Cronus rising, what was it called? Juggernaut. Okay. Slap together a fake cover, had somebody do it, just put it out there. So, and I told them that it was coming out in September, last September for Labor Day. You know, not me though. One of the people in the office, she said, between you and I heard them and I think it's coming out Labor Day. Okay. And you know what happened on Labor Day? 4 books came out with giant cephalopods in them.
What a coincidence, right?
Oh my God. They didn't have the title the same anymore. I think they learned from being mocked openly by me and by readers and stuff. But 4 cephalopod books. Labor Day of last year. I was like, idiots. I swear. So it's like, you know, I write my own stuff. Okay, I come up with my own titles, my own characters, my own plots. I don't try and steal anybody's stuff. I try and be original. And if you can't do that, you're in the wrong industry.
So one last question. Which one was your favorite to write? Like, which one do you think you had the most joy out of getting done?
Well, whenever you finish any book, especially one that's 180 or 200,000 words, you're like, hallelujah. You know, of course, it's not over. Then you got to re-edit and polish and micro polish and all that stuff. But it's never over. I don't know. I like Kraken 2 because I enjoyed the change of pace, like the scenes in the island and stuff. You know, in Diablo Caldera, and you know, I've done so much stuff in the water. It was nice to have a change of pace. You know. and I got to prove to people I can write dinosaurs, on dry land as well as anybody. But so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the action scenes, with Natalia Dragonova when she was being, when she counted those raptors, without getting into spoilers, and then that those hordes of what's reptilians, whatever, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that book's been out 2 years ago. I guess it's okay if I drop a few spoilers, but so I really enjoyed that. But then I enjoyed the new book too, the latest book. So I don't know. I guess one of those two would probably be my personal favorite. I like when I haven't like when you write. You're so close to the thing. You've written it and rewritten it, and edited and re-edited, edited. And after a while, you're like, oh, go away, or something like that. So when I haven't read it for like a year or two, and I pick it up like a reader, then I enjoy it more. The action scenes, the characters, the moods, the dialogue. Then I can enjoy it a bit more. So in a year after this one, you ask me that question again, and I'll tell you I'll have a better idea.
So
you haven't read it yet? You haven't gotten the new book yet?
Not yet.
Oh, you're in for it.
I'm hoping I get it because we're in the middle of like this crazy road trip filming thing. We were just up in Cheyenne, Wyoming filming. This Saturday we're back in South Dakota and Nebraska filming. 2 weeks from now we're in New Mexico. So I'm hoping by the time we're in New Mexico I have it, so I have something when we're just relaxing at the hotel that I can sit and enjoy.
There is Kindle versions.
I know, but there's just something about opening a book, It's really hard. Even like Audible books, it's really hard for me because I want to have it in my hands. I don't know. I'm weird. I'm old school, I guess, like that.
I feel the same way. Sometimes for me, when I'm reading, like I like to read to my little girl before bed every night, and the Kindle thing comes in handy. Especially if the lights are off. The bright screen does make it a little easier and stuff. So, there are advantages to technologies and disadvantages.
Yeah, and like I do listen to Audible from time to time. Gives me something to do while I'm at work. Otherwise, I'm just typing along.
Well, it's a good sized book. It's over 500 pages. I can tell you that much. It is. I mean, well, you've seen the review, so use your own judgment.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I can't wait.
Thank you. I love the cover. Have you seen the cover art?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That was from Davida Bonadonna, my cover artist who painted that and stuff. Poor guy, I pester him to death. Because, I used to be an artist myself. My degree was in film and animation. So when I have an image in mind, I'm like on that guy, like white on rice and all. But, I think he's used to it by now. And he did a phenomenal job. I mean, like, even some pervert, was on a fan page was like, I don't know about the book, but I'm going to buy it just because I like her butt. And I was like, works for me. You go, boy. Plop down that money.
So another reason we're going to talk today is some of your theories and some of the stuff I've seen you talk about on the fan pages and stuff like that, and your personal pages. So the first thing I found really interesting was that Triassic Kraken. Based off what you have seen, like what do you feel it was?
Well, I happen to be privileged to know Professor McMenamin personally. Dr. McMenamin, he's a geology professor and paleontologist from Mount Holyoke College. And in fact, he was one of the paleontologists that worked with me on my first formal paleo paper on plesiosaurs and stuff. But I've even hung out with him and had beers in Boston.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We were. I had to go meet with him because they were looking to do a documentary on the Triassic Kraken, and we met with a producer, a TV producer for it, and I had to take the train all the way to Boston and all that. So he and I were hanging out, waiting for the guy. Our producer was like 45 minutes late for the meeting, and so we were hanging back, kicking back, whatever, like whatever. Stuff. By the time he got there, we were like laughing like old college buddies and stuff. And then he comes down, he sits down, and he has a blast hanging out with us and all this stuff. And he goes, "You guys are great. I could definitely work with the two of you." He goes, "So how do you two know each other?" And I go, I know Mark's going to get mad at this, but it's okay. I went, well, I said, I used to date his sister. It's a long story. He goes, what? That's not true. We just met. And I'm like, Mark, come on, stop. It's okay if he knows. That's not true. So anyway, he's got a good sense of humor. But yeah, so basically the theory was, and I'm not Mark, so I don't know everything about this, but they found all these vertebrae in what's called Berlin ichthyosaur, okay, in Nevada. These preserved, ichthyosaur carcasses, remains, bones, skeletons, etc. And there was a lot of unusual stuff about them. And it wasn't like they were all killed at the same time, because they're not. There are different time periods and stuff. They're separated. They're not like a mudslide or an underwater avalanche. It wasn't anything like that. So they were killed at different time periods, whether it was a year apart or 6 months apart or 5 years apart or whatever. Some of them have these bizarre injuries, and I've seen been privy to the classified photos and stuff. They have like their neck grabbed and like snapped, like twisted, the head almost twisted off. And some of them have these huge ligature marks, like stuff was wrapped around them so hard that the bones broke, and you could see these marks going around, and it's obviously looks like tentacles and stuff. Okay. And these are 50-foot ichthyosaurs. They're not small. They're the size of a humpback whale. Okay. And, then there was they found also in the same area, they found the centrums, the bones, the circular portions of the backbones, okay, without the processes. They're called centra in plural. And these big bones are like arranged in these long linear patterns on what would have been the ground. And the patterns look exactly like the suction cups on the arms of an octopus. So when they looked into it further, they found that the wave motion could not have moved them or arranged them into these patterns there. And then the other thing was, well, people said it was, detractors said, well, it's decay. The animal died and rotted and the bones fell out in that place. But they're not the bones from the same ichthyosaur. They're different bones from different ichthyosaurs that somebody assembled and put together in this. So the theory being that since octopi like to play with things, and they're highly intelligent, that this creature in its midden was playing with the bones of its victims, and when it picked up a bunch of them like that or put them down, like it formed to match the suckers on its arms and stuff. And the theory at first was, met with a lot of hostility. I think that you get a lot of people that want to attack something just so they can get their name out there also, Yeah.
Like, well, plus, I think once you promote anything that's kind of new or against the norm, there's a lot of paychecks that go into a lot of other stuff. So,
Well, you see that, but it's also people are hangers on. They want it, their time. And why does he get to be in the line? Like, I'm going to attack his theory and try and tear it apart. Okay, so you see some of that too. And the interesting thing is that once it stopped going viral, these attacks and stuff all stopped. See, which is also odd. But it's beginning more and more accepted. For example, they found recently a fish fossil with a squid that had attacked it. And the fish fossil has the same type of damage that the ichthyosaurs have. The broken bones, crushed ligature marks, stuff like that, on a smaller scale. Then they also found a small ichthyosaur, I think it was like maybe 2 meters long or something, that had also been attacked by a cephalopod, and its neck had been twisted and broken and twisted back the same way. So it's looking more and more just like a larger version, the same type of thing. You don't get octopi don't have bones. So
they're not going to fossilize.
So the odds of that happening, even chitin doesn't, what the beaks are made of, even that doesn't fossilize very well. So, but I think it's distinctly possible. We know now, courtesy of Paul de La Salle, another person who worked on my paper with me, he's a paleontologist from the UK. He's the one who found the piece of jaw from the Wilstock monster. And then they, what's his name? I think it was Dean Lomax, quite well-known paleontologist, was able to take that and realize that these, ichthyosaurs like the Kronosaurus got much bigger than they thought. And then they checked their collection and they had one even bigger. So now they know that Kronosaurus got to probably be as big as a blue whale, possibly bigger.
I just saw that. Oh, that came across the papers a couple months ago, I think.
Mhm.
I thought that was interesting because here, you know, just to see a blue whale in person, they're gigantic.
Yeah, I think the other one's called the Aust colossus. Don't hold me to the pronunciation, but these animals were ginormous. Now the question is then, if something's going to prey on one of them, it's got to be pretty big and pretty bad, you know. And there's usually, I mean, something preys on almost everything. Even the blue whale gets hunted by orcas.
Yeah.
So if you're going to attack a bunch of Kronosaurs that are as big or twice as big as a bus, you've got to be pretty big and pretty bad, bring a lot to the game. They did have some small teeth. They are predators. They're going to fight back, obviously, and stuff. But this makes sense that there'd be something down there like that that would evolve to take them out. They do have vulnerabilities, and if something as intelligent as an octopus would know how to, maximize its attack and do the most harm and so forth. So, but yeah, I think it's possible. I think it's very likely that they were out there. So,
yeah, octopuses are like super smart. I remember back in like 2003, they did a documentary called "The Future Is Wild," and they were talking about like the next sentient being after humans that would come on land and make tools, which I guess now isn't correct, but what they said would be octopuses. And they had a theory where they'd start climbing in trees like monkeys, and some would hunt tools and they'd hunt birds and stuff like that.
Well, they said, people have expressed the theory that if they had been capable of, it's not tool use, but their lifespans, though, they live very long, I think like 5 years or something like that. If they had longer lifespans, a lot of people, scientists have said, they would be the dominant life form on the planet. They would develop technology and so forth and so on. But they dream. There's videos out there, and you can see an octopus as it's dreaming, as it sleeps, and in its sleep, it's changing colors based on what it's seeing, experiencing, and its papillae, its skin textures altering, all this stuff, because what it's seeing in its sleep is reflected on its body. It's really something.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those on YouTube. I think, yeah, octopuses are just amazing. I've seen one or two, obviously in like aquariums and stuff. But just to watch them, and you can see them like moving their tentacles on the wall, and you can see them like figuring stuff out.
And they have excellent vision, so when they're looking at you, they see you quite well.
Yeah.
My experiences with them, hands-on, I've been limited to fishing ones. Like when we were in Hawaii ages ago, I kept these I think it was the common octopus, vulgaris is the name, but and I kept hooking them. They would attack the bait and stuff, and then if they get snagged or whatever, and then I bring one up. You're talking, I don't know, something about a yard long, head to something like that, maybe a little bigger, and you're trying to not hurt the thing, and you're trying to take the hook out, and it's not trying to attack you, but it's trying to immobilize you, because I guess the hook obviously hurts a little bit. You're trying to remove it, and it's confused, but it's like they're all over you. And thankfully, they don't have toothy suckers or those big, like fangs come out of suckers like a squid does. But you pull one arm off and 6 more take its place. It's a pain in the butt. I had to have 3 or 4 guys at the same time help me. I'm like, please, I can't get this thing off me, So it's like all at the same time. Everybody had to grab a tentacle or two and then pull so we could throw them back over the side. But they're amazing animals. It's like the Beatles song, I'm not going to sing it. Copyrights.
Yeah. But, copyright strike right away for that one.
Garden, baby.
So, going back to the Megalodon that you had talked about earlier.
Okay.
Obviously, I've seen your theory. I think it's rather intriguing, especially because I have quite a few Megalodon teeth of my own. And so it's really easy to see what you're talking about. But before I show pictures or anything, do you want to kind of describe your theory on Megalodon?
Well, the most up-to-date first info that's been out there on Megalodon lately, I think it was Kenju Shimada last year. He put out a scientific paper, and he, reined in these rampant desires on people to exaggerate the size of the shark. The truth is that, well, I'll give you an example. Okay, so this is the tooth of a great white shark. And this tooth has a slant height of 3.25 inches. That's a big great white shark tooth, okay? And based on enamel height, this shark was probably 22, maybe 23 feet long, okay? So why would a 6-inch tooth indicate a 60-foot shark if a 3.25-inch tooth equals a 22-foot shark? You see what I'm saying? That would mean 6.5-inch tooth, which would be like this, okay, would mean your fish was around 44 feet long. So Shimada crunched the numbers and came up with the accurate estimate that the average megalodon was probably 35 feet long as an adult, and the exceptional ultra rare ones had an absolute maximum approaching or at 50 feet. So that's the known now established size of the fish. And that's a huge, dangerous, terrifying animal, okay? Yeah. Nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's at that size, it's literally as bigger than a bus. But one thing you'll notice about Megalodon, as you look at its lineage, its teeth change. If you look at Otodus obliquus, you know, it has these straight dagger-like, and I got the whole collection. I can bring them in one by one and show them to you, all of them. But as you work your way up through it, when you get to the last two of them, you start to see these sudden changes. And this is related to whales and increased size and a lot of other stuff. But Chobutensis, which is the most immediate, believed to be the most forerunner of Megalodon, and also swam with it in the same oceans around, I think, 2.5 million years or something like that. Okay, and it were both very large sharks. Chobutensis got to be approximately 40 feet long. Megalodon got to be approximately 50 feet long, but they're very similar. Okay, in terms of like tooth design and things like that, morphology. What you notice about the teeth is when Megalodon is small, as it's, and I have baby ones too, but the teeth are very similar to that of the great white. They are triangular, pointed, okay, and thin from the side, okay? Not this thin, but thin. But most importantly, they have coarse serrations here. The serrations are the same as they would be for a great white shark that size. So this tells you that you've got an animal that is similar to a great white in terms of its behavior. It's an active predator. It's probably fast enough. It's chasing down big fish, cyrenids, things of that nature, you know, small cetaceans, etc. As the shark grows, though, the teeth, and people have said, oh, the teeth, the serrations are always tiny and the tooth just gets bigger. But that's not true. I've compared the teeth at different sizes, and you can see that the teeth, the serrations get smaller and smaller and smaller as the tooth gets bigger. And the tooth also gets thicker. The crown becomes very blocky, especially your anterior teeth, you know, upper jaw, that type of stuff in the center. So eventually you develop these teeth, especially in the top, where it's like a thick chisel, you know, like a thick chisel, very heavy, you know, look at it from the side. If you put these two side by side, okay, I'm going to try and do this, if I can do this to make them look the same size, you can see the difference in thickness there, even if they were the same height. Okay, one's a blade, one is more like a chisel. And the tip comes down like this. So now you have the crown of this tooth, okay, if you can see this, the crown here is very thick, like almost like a cylinder in the center. And then it has these flanges on the crown here that thin out, and they come to these long hacksaw-like edges. No other sharks have teeth like this, okay? So you got to say to yourself, well, what are these for? And the answer is, if it was eating, if these teeth were designed to shear through flesh, then they would be like the teeth of the great white. They would be daggers with coarse serrations for cutting through meat, you know? And it's not a hunting strategy thing because, you know, oh, well, they were attacking whales and, you know, crushing their spines and stuff like this. That's fine if you can catch a whale, but you're a shark that big, you're pretty slow, and well, I'll get to that in a minute. But the great white preys on elephant seals sometimes. And elephant seals are as big or often bigger than the great white. But it's still able to kill them with no problem with its sharp, thin, dagger-like teeth. It comes up on the elephant seal, it tries to bite it in the haunch, you know, way back there, its propulsion unit, and then swim away, wait for it to bleed out, and come back and feed, okay? So it doesn't need crushing teeth to do that or anything like that. If you're attacking a whale, and most of the whales, some Megalodon and Chubbytensis were smaller, especially in the beginning, like Cedotherium and stuff like that, they were 25, I don't know, 30 feet long, most of them, okay? Then you don't need these bone-crushing teeth to kill a whale like that, okay? You can just inflict damage when it's flukes or it's peduncle, you know, that type of thing. That's where the flukes connect, okay? And once you immobilize it or hit it in the gut, you know, you get in that bite just like, you know, a great white would do for an elephant seal, okay? And then you swim away and you wait for it to bleed. And then you come in and it's dinner time. You don't want to get into a wrestling match with your prey. So saying that these teeth are designed to grab a whale and crush its spine, and there were prehistoric sperm whales back then, and Zygophyster and all these other animals, you know, they had teeth, okay? So if you're going to get into a match like that, you're going to get bitten back, you can lose an eye, you can get your gills ripped open, you can be killed, okay? All these things are something a predator wants to avoid. So the reason that you have these tiny serrations, honestly, is not for cutting flesh, they're for cutting bone, okay? Like a hacksaw, you know, or what else? Well, a hacksaw, really, something, or a stone. I mean, that's what it's basically like a stone chisel with hacksaw blades. So these teeth are designed to crunch through bone, but more importantly, and I discussed this in a later blog post, I did some checking on it, is that they're actually designed to go through ribs. And I don't mean necessarily break ribs, but actually go between ribs. So that if this is two of the whale's ribs, and this tooth comes down like this, it comes down, and as it starts to bite, these thin flanges here with the hacksaw edges, and there's another one here and another one here, okay? They're exerting tremendous pressure and slicing into these ribs where my fingers are, okay? And it's happening on both sides. And the ribs are just going to crunch and pop, and the jaws are going to go right through. And that's because the shark needs to get through the rib cage. It wants to get to the juicy stuff that's in there, okay? It wants the heart, the lungs, you know, this type of stuff. And the reason for that is this is the hallmark of an animal that is predominantly a scavenger. So when you're a big shark, 40, 50 feet long, you might weigh 30, 50 tons even at that size, okay? You're not a fast swimmer. I mean, you're swimming along, you know, slower than probably right whale speed or something like that, okay? Or a bowhead. You're not exactly the greyhound of the seas. Not much can mess with you, but you can't chase down, you know, fleet-flippered whales that could swim at 30 miles an hour. And I got the stats for it, by the way, just to check this out, okay? No, I'm just telling you. Like, you know, I got whale swimming speeds here and all sorts of stuff. So, but back to the teeth. So basically, this is when if you're feeding on carcasses, okay? And I'll take a step back. Another thing detractors said, oh, how will there be enough carcasses, you know, to feed all these sharks? Okay. Well, hey, I don't even have to get into the fact of how many whales there are, you know. I mean, like, there used to be 1.5 or 1.25 million humpbacks, okay? If you know, like, by age alone, you'd have tens of thousands of carcasses every year. But the truth of the matter is that for every 50-foot megalodon, there would probably be, I don't know, 200 that range from 20 to 30 feet. I mean, think about it. How many 20-foot great whites do we know of? One, right?
Yeah.
Deep blue. But how many else? There's hundreds or thousands of them, okay? So the point is that, you know, and deep blue scavenges a lot, okay? Have you seen the video with the dolphins teasing her?
Yeah, because very sluggish divers like all around.
But it's embarrassing. I mean, like, they come up and, like, it's almost like they fart in her face, like release that air bubble. One of the dolphins smacks her with its flukes. The other one nips her, you know, and they're laughing as they swim away. And you would think, oh, there's a juicy dolphin right in my face. All I gotta do is bite, you know, but she doesn't. And the dolphins know they can't get caught, and she knows she can't catch them, so she doesn't even try. So anyway, lest I digress. So the point is so let's say that we've got, I don't know, pick a number. You got a 50-foot megalodon, okay? How many small sharks, subadults to, you know, 20 or 30 footers you think are out there at the same time? Couple hundred? Probably?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say there's 200 or 300, okay? Well, those 200 or 300 smaller megalodons are all active predators because they haven't gotten so big that their cartilage skeletons stop them from becoming efficient hunters. So they're active hunters. Okay, what are they eating?
They're eating the smaller whales.
Right, and every time they kill one and feed on it and they finish, what's left? A carcass.
Yeah.
There you go, boys and girls, and there we have it. Okay, so there's plenty of carcasses out there for these big megalodons to eat, more than they could probably ever eat, to be honest. Okay, I mean, your own brood, your own children, grandchildren are effectively feeding you. Okay, the problem is that if this carcass, is a day old, a week old, 2 weeks old, etc., it's already been stripped. Smaller sharks have chewed away all the juicy blubber and the intestines and stuff like that. So the only parts that are left are what's behind that rib cage. They can't gnaw through it. But Big Mama can with those giant 5 or 6 foot wide jaws of hers. See? And that's where that nutcracker technique comes in, where she comes in and she bites down on the chest cavity right there, crunches through there, rips it open there, swallows the ribs, the guts, and all of it. And just to prove a point. Okay, so this one's Squalodon atlanticus, and this is an unknown one. But these are both megalodon prey items, okay? These are prehistoric whales, and I don't know if you can see this, but you see that slice on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a slice in the rib. And you see this one? Same type of thing, okay? So this is exactly what I'm talking about. You've got your rib here, okay? You've got your big shark coming along. That tooth comes in between them, slice. This rib pops, crunch, crunch, crunch. These fossils abound, these ribs that are broken, crushed, etc., and sheared through. So, I mean, we know now that these big sharks were active scavengers. So the question becomes, well, were they also active predators? And like I've said before, I've never said that Megalodon was a scavenger 100%. Okay, that's ridiculous. My belief is, and the morphology and the numbers, own up to it, is that as the shark got bigger and more gravity prone, okay, it gets slower, more cumbersome. It's just harder and harder for it to achieve speed, let alone maneuverability. The blue whale with a bony skeleton can still hit 30 miles an hour. Okay, the highest speed on, let's say, they just did tests on basking sharks recently, and with hooked up and everything. And basking sharks sometimes breach like great whites do.
I've seen a couple of pictures of this.
Yes, and they're a 26.5-foot basking shark that weighs 7,000 pounds is able to hit, astonishingly, 12 miles an hour, okay, which they said was the same speed as a great white. Now, a smaller great white, I think it was 11.5 foot, can do 22 miles an hour on a breach, okay? But the point is they're not as fast as people think. Great whites are not swimming at 35 miles an hour and stuff like that. Whatever. Okay. But so now we know that a 7,000 pound shark, 26.5 feet long, has a maximum speed of 12 miles an hour. 12. Okay. Now, what was it chasing? I mean, let's look at some numbers here. Pilot whale, 30 miles an hour, 30.4. Finback, almost 26. Orcas, almost 35. Humpbacks, almost 17. The slowest is a gray whale at 10 or 11. Okay. So you've got these whales, and the bigger ones were too big for the active predatorial megalodons and chubbytensises to kill. They're just too big. If you're a 60-foot sperm whale, nobody's going to mess with you. Even a big megalodon probably wouldn't mess with you at that point. But more importantly, the big ones couldn't catch them, and the small ones couldn't kill them. So the prey items were really these smaller whales that were 25 or 30 feet long. And when they went extinct, that was a crippling blow to the species, because you didn't have food for the small guys, and when the subadults couldn't eat, the big adults couldn't eat. The big adults can't eat, they can't reproduce, and so forth. And there you have it. I'm Max Hawthorne, and I approve this message.
Oh, it was fascinating. So another creature that's kind of gone through, like, looking at as it grew, it changed a lot, was Tyrannosaurus. Obviously, like, what used to be Nanotyrannus is just a juvenile Tyrannosaurus. And you can see the changes from, like, a fully, like, it's running down as prey to, like, the big Sues and Scotties and stuff, where they're, like, 10 tons and they can probably barely move over 9-10 miles an hour. What are your thoughts on like Tyrannosaurus?
Well, I think there's two. The main question is, it's not a question of how fast it is. It's a question of how fast its prey is. So
Which
if
they
Triceratops, which is the predominant prey, and in my opinion, the reason for those bone crunching teeth, grabbing the shield and stuff, you've seen it in artwork, I'm sure.
yeah,
But
heads off and
yeah, so they want to get that Triceratops by the neck. Also, they want to break that neck. They want to bring them down, that type of thing. So if Triceratops is only of similar speed or even slower, then the T-Rex doesn't have to be any faster anyway. That's the question. Are they pack hunters where the juveniles, are doing some of the work, or are the juveniles like herding the prey and for ambushes? I've seen the suggestions of that, even films and stuff. But T-Rex is like, we have like fossils like hadrosaurs and stuff that have T-Rex, big T-Rex teeth in them and stuff that have escaped and have healed. So that they're actively hunted.
Yeah, we have one in our museum here in Denver where if you look at the tail vertebrae, you can see where it's been bitten out of and healed itself. Yeah, I always thought that was so cool to see.
Yeah, I would imagine that like T-Rex is the same thing, except for the fact that T-Rex has the advantage that it doesn't have a skeleton made of cartilage. And this is a critical fact. Even Nat Geo has said that that's the reason why whale sharks will never get as big as a blue whale. They have the same bounty in terms of food, plankton, krill. It's an endless supply. So why is the whale shark not getting to weigh 200 tons? Why is it maxing out at around 60 feet instead of 100 or 110? And it's like a skyscraper. I look at cartilage, shark cartilage, for example, as sort of being like tire rubber. Okay, it's actually not that tough, but if we look at it as tire rubber in this, for instance, versus like steel girders. So if you're building a skyscraper, you want steel girders. You don't want girders made out of tire rubber. If you make them out of tire rubber, how big is that skyscraper going to get before something really bad happens?
Not very tall.
Right. So if people go on my website, it's I guess maxhawthorne.com or cronosrising.com, and you look up, there's one piece I did called Megalodon versus Orca, I think it is. You could probably even Google it, you'll find it. It's like top on the first page. And in there, a friend of mine comes across the carcass of a big basking shark on Briar Island, okay? And it's probably at least a 30-foot shark. And he goes up to it, and there's full vertebrae exposed. And he takes a knife, like a fillet knife, and he just goes like this, slice, right through it, okay? And he goes, you see that? Definitely a shark. If that was bone, I would never be able to do that. There was no sawing. He literally just put the blade against it and pushed right through it, like sliced it like a cake, okay? And that's cartilage. So when you have a skeleton made of cartilage, it's great if you're a small shark. If you're 20 feet long, something like that, 10 feet long, look at mako sharks. They're like insane cruise missiles, okay? But those muscles, your body's muscles, the tendons attached to bone. Ligaments hold bone and bone together, okay? So muscle contractions is your pressure. The bigger you get, the more pressure pushing the water, etc. And the same thing happens with these vertebrae on these very large sharks. That's why whale sharks are not speed demons. That's why deep blue is not a speed demon, etc. But T-Rex doesn't have that problem. She's still got, a skeleton made of solid bone. We're actually probably the poorest, kind of variety we see in sauropods and stuff. I'm not familiar with a cross section of how a Tyrannosaurus femur looks and stuff. But, they have a sturdy skeleton. That's why we had sauropods, like Argentinosaurus and stuff, the biggest land animals of all time. They have bony skeletons. If they had cartilage, obviously that wouldn't work.
Yeah. Well, plus T-Rex with its eyesight and its ears, and it could hear pretty well, and has a lot more advantages. So looking at like a lot of these theories on cryptids and stuff, because obviously we do some of the paranormal stuff on our channel as well. Mm-hmm. But with like Loch Ness or Bigfoot, mm-hmm. or giant krakens and stuff in the ocean. How much do you think that any of those could still be alive?
You mean Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Well,
because I've seen some really crazy books on Bigfoot.
Well, purportedly, David Paulides and his people have gotten actual Bigfoot DNA, and they've broken it down. They got several samples. I watched, I think, a special, one of his things, and one thing they got was a Sasquatch had torn somebody's rain spout off their house in a fit of rage and was crushing and biting it. And why it decided to attack a rain spout, I don't know. But anyway, and it had, they had dental impressions, they crunched down on this metal, and there was some gum tissue in there and even some tartar. So they got DNA from that. They did another trick on one where they had left out, I think it was, I think pancakes with syrup. And the bottom of the plate had like rough sandpaper attached to it. And when it was licking the plate, it got cut. And they got samples that way, et cetera. So they finally found people that would do the analysis, because it seems like every place they found, when they heard that it was a Sasquatch, potential Bigfoot, they flipped out, cursed them out, refused to help them, refused to give them the test results, all sorts of stuff. They had to go to court. They had their test results. It's almost as if somebody just doesn't want you to know,
I've heard some crazy stories of like what happens when people do report Bigfoots, like what happens to them, and
yes,
it makes you wonder why does all that happen if there's nothing out there,
Exactly. So according to the test results from what he said, they were able to trace the Sasquatch lineage back to 15,000 years ago, and they're able to actually go all the way down and figure out who the original ancestor is. Apparently the techniques are that advanced now, and half of the DNA came from a human female. Okay, so all Sasquatch, Bigfoot, at least the ones they tested, are half human. Okay, and the other half is an anomaly, some unknown creature, which I am sure, since the female was a human, I don't believe this was a willing sexual encounter, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can imagine this, okay? So I would imagine that, since your average male Sasquatch is 8+ feet, sometimes 9, and there are reports of ones that are 10 and 12, I would imagine that the original father was some sort of gigantic ape. I mean, because if you look at them, they have ape-like characteristics, body hair, tremendous musculature, etc.
Yeah, their long arms and stuff.
Yeah. And also, the human anatomy doesn't hold up very well at that size. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if the other half was some creature like a Gigantopithecus. And since some reports out there of these enormous Sasquatch, which are sometimes seen fighting and even killing the regular ones, it may be like they have evolved into 2 different species, I would guess. And I saw one video. It was a little blurry, but it was a very big one, like over 10 feet tall, and it was moving more like a gorilla. It had long arms. It looked very ape-like, the whole movement and running and stuff. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that, you have some sort of Gigantopithecus or, some sort of descendant, of Gigantopithecus is one half of the equation, and the human is the other half, But I'm a firm believer. I mean, if you look at the Patty footage, the Patterson-Gimlin footage,
the original.
I can tell you right away that that's real. Okay, there's no doubt. Okay, and you've seen all these tests. The first thing is, anybody who says that that's a costume, okay, I had anatomy in college. I had to go see cadavers and all this stuff. Okay, I also had human origins. I studied the great apes, the zoos, all this other stuff. Okay, so anybody who says, "Oh, that's a costume," I wore that costume, all this other stuff, and I would tell them right to their face. Okay, when you see that animal walking at one point, and you watch its thighs, there's certain key frames that hits the ground, and you see the thigh muscles flex. Okay, boom. like huge quadriceps, the vastus lateralis, all these muscles. You could see them all. That's not a costume, okay? And there's this person doesn't have these giant leg muscles either, and then managed to grow all this hair on top of them, etc. You know, there was no technology then for it, and there's no technology even now for special effects to create that. And then there's the part where she's walking in the back, and I was told, and I believe this, that by someone, that there were actually 2 different Bigfoot filmed there. Because at one point,
I've seen it, and I'll have to send, if I can find it, I'll send you the link. Somebody broke it down where you can see Patty going into the woods, and then there's like another one standing in the woods watching them filming.
Well, the view walking from the back is what, you know, throws me, because all of a sudden she has these tremendously wide shoulders. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger covered with hair times 50. You know, you could see the latissimus dorsi and the trapezius, all these muscles rippling. No, again, not a costume, but it looks like a male. And then when you see her when she's walking towards the woods, she's not that, doesn't have all that upper body mass as much. So, you know, you really, I believe you got 2 different animals there and filmed from 2 different perspectives and stuff. But, you know, so I mean, I have no doubt that these creatures are real. I have no doubt that there are people out there that don't want people knowing about them, what about them, etc. You know, whether it's concerns over religion or, you know, who's the rightful owner of this continent, or I don't know what.
Yeah, well, see, like I've heard theories too of it's going to throw off the lumber industry, because then if there's, you know, these endangered species, now you can't log there anymore. Another thing I heard is if you trace like missing hikers and stuff, it almost matches perfectly with Bigfoot sightings. And so now if the government's been saying, oh, they don't exist, blah, 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 now they're liable for all those missing hikers.
Well, you've got, I mean, Paulides again, he has books out on this, the like Missing 411 series or something.
Yeah.
And I read his one about hunters in particular because I was curious. And, you know, you've got incidents where hunters are walking along and, like, let's say 3 of them, you know, single file, they've got guns. You know, these are grown men. They're comfortable in the woods. And then all of a sudden they're like, what do you think, Joe? And the middle guy looks back and Joe's gone. No Joe. He was there 5 seconds ago, just said something, and now he's gone. He's just not there. Not a shot fired, no weapon, no nothing. How does that happen? What grabs a grown man, immobilizes him, stops him from being able to make a sound? You know what I mean? And just disappears so quietly, his friends can't find a trace. You know, it would take something pretty big and powerful to pick somebody up, you know, and spirit them away like that. So, yeah, I mean, I had a heated discussion, we'll say, on one of these Facebook cryptid groups, and I had done a post on there about it showed these 2 big male chimps, you know, big, powerful, muscular chimps, and it was explaining how when there's a lot of food around, they come up to each other. They don't fight or they want to compete. So to avoid that, they come up and they give each other like a hug sort of thing, you know, like, hey, what's up? How you doing? This type of thing, you know, that kind of, and it alleviates tension and avoids alpha male conflicts. Okay. So I had shared it on this group and I said, now imagine seeing this with 2 10-foot male Sasquatch, except you're the meal. Okay. So I get attacked, verbally attacked by this guy. And he starts going on and on about, you know, Bigfoot don't eat people. They don't hurt people. They're gentle, this and that other stuff. And like he's going on and on trying to lecture me. And he keeps talking about penis size. You know, we can compare size all day long if you want all this stuff. And I'm like, what does this have to do with this conversation? You know? And like, first off, oh, I'm sorry. So you've seen these animals and you've filmed them and lived with them and documented them. A creature that's not even proved to exist or anything, but somehow you are the know-all, the master, omniscient one. You know everything about these creatures, right? Really? I don't think so. And I was like, and what's up with this focus on size and my this and all this other stuff? I'm like, why do you keep bringing... Anyway, I'm sorry, it was a stupid conversation.
Yeah, no, that missing for one. We watched that documentary that they made of it.
Hmm.
And that first case where there's 8 of them hunting, and the 80-year-old guy goes missing. They can't find even a candy wrapper. It's just like, how does that happen? Like, if he had walked off somewhere, like you'd find something.
There's so many that the book is so full of strange and scary circumstance. I mean, like it's like something you're dealing with. Whatever takes these people is powerful, is fast, is stealthy, and it's intelligent. Sometimes the bodies get returned under weird circumstances. It's almost as like with no shoes. Like who goes running or in their underwear? And their feet are all messed up. It's almost as if they were like in a cave somewhere and they had a chance to escape and they ran for their lives and they ran until they died from exhaustion and cold or exposure or something like that. So anyway, I don't know, but I'm a firm believer in Sasquatch. That's for sure. Am I going to go out looking for one?
If you ever want to go looking for a squatch, I know some people that will take it.
I know people too. I have a friend who's seen 3 of them actually, and
Really?
I'm going to interview him on my new show soon. Yeah, one of them was 12 feet tall. And
Really?
he saw it from 6 feet away. Walked right in front of him. Yep. So.
Great. Yeah,
Yep.
we have a Sasquatch museum out here in Colorado.
Mhm.
So they do all their programs and stuff. You can go up with them. And some of the stuff they have all the footprints, and it's just amazing to see the size. Before we do leave, though, just if you want to let everyone know where they can find you, if it's Twitter,
You can
Instagram,
find me. No.
well, just like they want to find out more about you, like find you on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, whatever.
I mean, I have Facebook, a Twitter account. I really don't use it. I just kind of like have Facebook posts tagged that go on there or something like that. But I mean, yeah, people look up Max Hawthorne, they'll find me. I think it's Max_Hawthorne. I'm not really sure. Like I said, I rarely use it, but I'm mostly on Facebook. They can find me under my personal page as Max Hawthorne, or more likely there's the fan page is the Cronus Rising novel series. I think it's called Max Hawthorne's Cronus Rising novel series now.
Yeah.
And the one for the new show I'll be doing is called Max Hawthorne's Monsters and Marine Mysteries. So, I mean, if anybody wants to pop in, give us a follow, join the group or anything like that, they're certainly welcome. All the books are available on Amazon. If anybody wants free samples, there are some free books, free downloads on my website, maxhawthorne.com, under the free book section. And yeah, check it out. Love to have some new people. It's always fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been great. I've enjoyed it.
It was my pleasure. And
Once again, we did want to say a big thank you to Max Hawthorne for joining us and being our first ever guest on our interviews. If you want to check out more of his stuff, please look in the description below, as you'll find links to Amazon, Facebook, etc. And please go help and support him. If you want to see more from us and more interviews, please click the link right here. If you want to see more from the group of Culz Paranormal, click the link right here. And please hit that subscribe button.